My teeth feel nice and clean. Went to the dentist this week, had a cleaning, and had an interesting conversation. It feels so good. Had an interesting conversation with my hygienist, who will go unnamed, because unfortunately for her slash him, I'm not going to tell you what it was. There, I just told you. We had a long conversation about engagement, about the startling fact, the shocking fact that this intelligent, articulate woman doesn't have a smartphone and doesn't really do anything in the online space at all. And I was really torn and I know that she's never really been a tech person, but she was expressing some fascination as I was preparing for my teeth cleaning, as I had my AirPods. I had my Apple AirPods in my ear, and I was queuing up a podcast on my smartphone, and she was asking me, she hadn't seen the wireless earbuds before, and she was asking me how they worked, and I was telling her how I could control and pause it when she talked to me and asked me questions, and I could turn up the volume on my Apple Watch. And she was quite startled by all of the technology that I had on my person while I was about to have my teeth cleaned. And so that was the preamble. After a good cleaning, we were talking as I was leaving, and she was saying that she's thinking about getting a smartphone. And she's resisting it, but she thinks she should because her mother wants her to be able to text to her, and her kids, of course, mock her mercilessly for not having one. And I got a little bit serious with her. And I basically almost read the riot act, where I said, and I struggle with this, but I recognize that there's a badge of honor that our peers have who decide that they aren't going to be influenced by the world of technology. It's like they're standing up as a resistance against the relentless march of all of the negative sides of technology, which we admit there are so many, the privacy situations, the bullying, all of the negative side of the online world. They feel that they are the bulwark that stands up against that. And there's a badge of honor. There's a pride in them for resisting for resisting the siren song that is technology that we all succumb to. But I take a different take on this. And the thing is that the world has changed. All of you I'm preaching to the choir here, because if you're watching this podcast, you've already embraced to a certain extent the world of change, and you understand that it is upon us and that we are in it. But if we don't understand and embrace it, we aren't in a position to guide it. We aren't in a position to be relevant as the relentless march of technology takes us in different directions. We are helpless against the flow. We are helpless against it. And I'm going to share with you a story. I might have shared this in the past, but it's a story that is from one of my keynotes about my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, who was born in Italy, grew up in Italy, was married, and as a newlywed, she and my grandfather came to Canada. And in those days, the emigration to Canada was, they took a train from northern Italy to France, a boat across the English Channel, a train to Liverpool, a ship to Montreal, and then a train to Vancouver. They spent the better part of a month covering half the world at a time when the world was a very large place. As a young man, years later, as a young boy, 11-year-old boy, 10-year-old boy, we would have dinner every couple times a month at Nona's house. And often when we were having dinner there would be phone calls to the family back in Italy. Where they would call, and everybody, because the whole family was gathered, there'd be a chance for us to all kind of like a group visit with them in Italy. And I don't even know what time it was in Italy at the time, but there'd be a phone call. And we would all have to talk to our Italian relatives. Have to, because kids, of course, didn't want to. We didn't know them, but we'd have to talk to them. But the adults would want to talk to them. And my grandmother would shout. She would yell into the phone. She would always be shouting at our relatives back in Italy, because there was one very simple, very unalienable fact in Nona's eyes. She couldn't conceive how she could cover this distance that had taken her a month to cover as a young woman. She could, if somebody's far away, you yell for them to hear. And so she didn't understand that the phone she could speak conversationally into the phone, and she didn't have to yell to reach our relatives in Italy. And here's the sad fact, and it's not something I'm proud of, but in my eyes, that marginalized my grandmother. I love her, But I didn't respect her the same way that I respected the rest of my family, the adults that understood how technology worked, how the world worked. So she wasn't a trusted advisor to me. She was a nurturer. She provided love, and I got a lot of gifts from my grandmother, but I didn't respect her the same way. And that's something that I'm kind of ashamed of today, but you can't blame the child for that reaction. In this day and age, if we resist using the communications technologies that make the world work, we are willfully marginalizing ourselves in the eyes of a big part of our community. You know, by the time I was a teenager, I thought all adults were idiots because that's what teenagers do, but there was no evidence to that fact. Adults were more competent in every aspect of the world than I was. Today, if our kids think we're idiots, if they've got proof. You know, if you don't know how to text, if you say, and I know I did a video in the past where it makes me so angry when people say that I'm too stupid to do this. If you admit that technology is beyond you to use, you end up marginalizing yourself and undermining your authority. And it's not undermining your authority, it's undermining your ability to make a difference in these lives when it counts. Because that's the gift that we need. We need to be able to have a young person or somebody turn to us for advice at some point, and to have a chance to make a difference in their lives, for our input to land with authority, to be trusted by them in order to make a difference, in order to provide guidance, in order to provide leadership in this world. So with my poor hygienist, she just stumbled into it as she said, you know, I'm thinking about it. And I recognized, and I called her out on it. I said, you're proud of the fact that you don't use technology. And she said, yes, I am. And she wasn't proud and boastful about it. She was somewhat chagrined at being called out at it. But then when I talked to her a little bit more about what price she was paying, I think it opened her eyes. And it certainly opened my eyes again to how passionate I am about this. And that's one of the big reasons that we do this vlog and we do the podcast, Gray Matters, is I don't think technology is the greatest thing on the planet. I don't think it helps us more than it hurts us. But I know that if we don't engage, if we deny its existence and we don't participate, that we're capitulating it to have whatever ravages it's going to have on our society. That our job is to engage, to understand, and to try and provide some guidance in this space. So that's it. A real rant today. A real rant from Steve. I know there's going to be great comments. So looking forward to the comments. The comments that you folks share in this YouTube channel just are so valuable to me, helping me guide me in the content that we create here for this vlog, but even more so, the content that I'm creating for the Gray Matters podcast, which if you haven't yet subscribed and listened, please check your local podcast provider and find Gray Matters with Steve Dotto, where we kind of teach you a lot more of the skills, a little less ranty, a little more practical. But with that, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Have fun storming the castle.